Hi, I'm Fran Spielman. We're coming to you today from the Sun-Times newsroom with our guest, Alderman Pat O'Connor, the mayor's floor leader and a 35-year veteran of the City Council.
Long time.
It is a long time. Is 35 years going to be it for you?
I don't know. It's a two-step decision. One, if I'm looking to do it again, and two, if the people in the neighborhood want to see me do it again. So we'll see.
How do you figure that out? Are you polling?
We're doing some polling, and we got some of the folks in the ward going out doing some door-to-door stuff, not in the sense of petition collecting, but just collecting info. And I'll make a decision in the next few days.
In the next few days?
Well, next week or so, anyway.
Really?
Yeah.
Your seatmate just retired, Marge Lorino.
Yeah.
Does that make you think about it, like a friend getting married?
Well, here, I've worked with Marge her entire time in the City Council, and we've talked about it. I knew she was going to leave some time ago, or at least that was the indication, the way she was pointing. But everybody knows when they've come to a point where they don't want to do this anymore, and she's reached it, and I'm not sure whether I have or not yet.
But the job has changed so much, and the decision making is it's one bad decision after another.
Well, I don't know that the job has changed. I think people's relationship to government has changed. My job is still the same. Try and do things for my community, try and get things into the community and resources that help keep the schools and the parks functioning right. So my job is pretty much service delivery. And then there's a portion of it that is policy and that is the citywide decisions, and they become tougher and tougher as the economy kind of fluctuates a little bit, and as we have some of these looming state mandates that require us to make some tough decisions as it relates to revenue. So that part's going to be hard.
And how angry is the electorate about this massive avalanche of taxes that are just the beginning of what you're going to need to do for pensions?
I think the electorate is more upset about almost intangibles. The electorate, they're mad at the president. They're mad at the country for having him as a president. They're mad at government in general. They don't like the status quo, but they definitely want people who know what they're doing. They've elected new people trying to change directions, and they find out sometimes it's disastrous. Look at the presidency. Look at the governor. I mean, you got folks that come in and they might be successful businessmen, but government doesn't have a profit margin. Government has places that lose money and can't be profit centers, and you can't go into government with the idea that you can run it like a business.
Why would you want to run again? It's a ticket to make more tough decisions, more tax increases. A big one is coming right after the election.
Well, I think when you have done something for as long as I have, in a neighborhood that I've spent all my life, I moved into the neighborhood when I was 8 years old, and I like it. I love the place I live. My kids all live in the same area. And I think if you look at what we have as a community by me, it's worth trying to preserve. We are statistically the safest place in the city of Chicago, lowest crime rate of anywhere else. Parts of our neighborhood were among the top 10 in the country to live in, according to Redfin. We've got some pretty vibrant commercial strips. There's a lot to be said for what's in our community, and I don't take credit for it all happening, but I do believe I've played a part, and I enjoy it.
But the decisions that are coming, what's going to be needed? Are you going to have to raise property taxes again, the water and sewer tax again, more telephone tax increases again?
Well,
all of the above?
I think what you have to do is put it more in context. There were 10 or 12 years that we didn't raise any property taxes. And so, that hiatus from incremental tax increases has made any talk of a tax increase becomes like a third rail. But it really, when I first started in government, it was really something that incrementally was done every year or two to keep up with the pace of inflation pace of pricing, the pace of our contracts.
And then Daley didn't.
And then it was decided that this was a bad thing.
And that was a big mistake, wasn't it?
Well, I think on its own, not as big a mistake, but combine that with the state mandates for bringing the pensions into an actuarial formula as opposed to the math formula that used to be done, those two combine to make it a kind of a toxic cocktail.
Right. So after the election, even if you do this pension borrowing, which you say you're for, right?
No, I haven't said I'm for it. What I'm for is looking for a solution that helps us to minimize whatever the increases might be. And I think that we have an obligation to look into ways in which to save money, or save the tax increases, if you will. The state, in its wisdom, selected years just kind of out of the hat, saying you must be actuarial by such and such a date. And so by doing that, they create this artificial cliff, which now we have to like abide by. And frankly, it makes it very, very difficult, but we obviously now have a requirement or an obligation to find funding sources to do that. You can't possibly do it all in the context of property tax. I mean, you know, if you had your wishes, you know, the state would revamp its tax system. It would probably do a better job in terms of the income tax. And they'd either have an increase that would help fund the state so that we're not losing money there, or they'd put it into a graduated tax, and it would be perhaps a more fair system. Those things would help local governments be better pilots of their own ship.
Dream on, don't hold your breath on that one, you know that.
Of course not. Yeah, no, but I'm saying, so at the local level, you can only play the cards you're dealt, right?
Right, so which cards will you have to play if you're there?
So
One of each, probably, the property, the telephone, and the water and sewer, right? All of them have to go up, don't they?
Well, I mean, water and sewer are going up incrementally now.
They have to go up more.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, and those funds can really only go up to the point where they're funded. I mean, they're sole source funds, so you can't increase them in terms of the fund themselves to
right, but it frees
spill
up
over.
other money.
Right.
So are we looking at increases in all three, which are the sources for the pension funds?
I don't think so.
So which ones are we looking at?
You know what? Obviously, we haven't made the decisions because we haven't quantified if and how much we can bond. And
Maybe
that
half of
plays,
it. Maybe
no.
no.
There's you could bond significantly more than half.
More than 10 billion? How much more?
No, but I'm saying you could bond
debt is
significantly
28.
more than, but you could do more than half
You could do more than half of the 28?
potentially.
Really?
Well, it just depends on what the market is. It depends on what you can save. It depends on how much you could recoup in terms of refinancing, and then whether you put out the new bonds or not. So, but my point is, I guess here's the thing. We're looking at ways to try and solve this. And because of a mayoral race and a bunch of challengers out there, they basically just want to put the brakes on making decisions. And so as a result, the people that are running for office are out there saying, oh, we have to slow this down. And people in the city of Chicago, I think, have a right to know what their future is. And so I don't think we have the ability to slow decision-making down. I think we have to go out there and have a thorough discussion, find out where we're at, and then make a decision as to whether we'll move forward on various parts of it. And that whole amount will be determined based on what each segment is.
You know Paul Vallis, he said this is a financial straitjacket, we should stop it. What do you say to him?
Well, I worked with Paul when he was at the city as the city budget director. I worked with him when he was over at the public schools. He is a wizard at budgets, right? According to everyone. But sometimes that wizardry is more how you say it and how you present it than whether or not it's sound fiscal policy. And so I think.
What do you say to him? What's your challenge to him?
Well, here's the only challenge you can say is, don't tell us what not to do. Tell us what you think you should do. Because if you're going to be the mayor, at some point in time you're going to sit in a chair and you're going to have to chart a course. And so the idea of saying don't do this, don't do that, that's fine. Then maybe you're correct. But now shouldn't the next step be, all right, but what do you do? Shouldn't that be the question that people should be asking him? It's not a question to ask the mayor or ask one of the members of the city council. If somebody's running for that highest office in the city, somebody should say, what's your plan? Don't tell me what is wrong with the other guy's plan. Tell me what your plan is. And then when you can compare, then you have an opportunity to know whether the guy's got the chops or not.
But even the financial experts say they want to see tax increases with the borrowing, not just borrowing.
But
so what taxes are you prepared to raise?
I don't know that you're prepared to raise any of them, and I think what you need to do is you need to figure out, first and foremost, quantify how much you need. So when you know how much you need, you know what sources you can go to. You can sometimes, and you've been around the budget process for a long time as well, sometimes you can make a budget shortfall out of a patchwork quilt, and sometimes you need to buy a new blanket, right? So dependent
This
upon
is
the
in the
money.
blanket category. This is not a patchwork quilt kind of thing.
Well, but it depends on how much is what it comes down to. So we won't know until
So
we
there's
get
a
there.
property tax increase coming for sure, isn't there?
But here, you could say that any year there's a property tax increase
Shouldn't there be
somewhere
one
in the
every year
offing.
anyway?
Well,
right?
probably, but the question is, if you do them in small increments, it's much less devastating. But at some point, there is, there's this, the straw that broke the camel's back. At some point, you get to a point that even a small one finally makes it where it's difficult. I think the city of Chicago's challenge is it's not just next year. We have out years for the next couple years. There are goals and benchmarks that we have to hit. And so we're trying now to put out a game plan that basically gives people predictability for the next 3 or 4 years. We could say, oh, we're just going to do next year. But I think the more responsible thing is to try and delineate a plan that gives people some predictability going forward.
Is the mayor running for re-election? Are you sure of it, and are you waiting to see his definitive word on whether he is? Because if he doesn't run, I expect you won't either.
I would only say that the mayor seems to be doing everything you would do if you're running for office.
Of course.
He's out there doing his job. He's out there making announcements for the future of the city. He's raising money. He's talking to people about, running a campaign. He's got people working on a campaign. So I think until I would hear differently, I assume he is running.
Right, but you know in your own mind, and you know him as well as you do, you know that decision has not been made yet. When will it be made, and how difficult? What are the factors?
Well, I think he's made the decision to go into this thing like he's moving forward. Now, whether he's going to make an announcement, today or tomorrow, or what the announcement will be, it's a very personal decision. I mean, he loves what he does, and he has a great passion for being the mayor of the city of Chicago. So I expect that he will, but if he didn't, I would think he would say he's done a great job, and then it's time for somebody else to do it. But quite honestly, my impression is he's going to run for mayor and he's going to win, and we'll be talking about this in 2 or 3 years, where we're at.
You yourself have said how difficult this re-election is going to be. What is it about Rahm Emanuel? Is it just the circumstance? Is it the trial coming up, which is such a wild card? Is it his personality? Is it the taxes? Is it the mood of the electorate? Is it all of the above? What is the problem here?
Well,
as you see it.
Here, all right. Start with, is it the trial coming up? The mayor is not a prosecutor. He's got nothing to do with that trial.
And yet he has everything to do with it in terms of the tape and the memory of it.
What was done with that tape was the exact same thing that's been done with every police tape in a shooting since they began having tapes. Everything was done the same. The tape was turned over to the federal government. The tape was turned over to the state's attorney, as they all are. He doesn't try these cases. He doesn't decide these cases.
I know, but you and
So
I
the
both
folks,
know that.
but this is my point. The folks that will hold him responsible will do that rather than the people that are responsible for the thing itself. Number one, the policeman that did the shooting. Number two, the police department that was involved in the after reporting. Number three, the state's attorney's office who charged the individual.
But are you
and
worried
number
about
four,
an
the state's
acquittal?
attorney's office who tries the case.
Are you worried about an acquittal and what would happen then? All bets would be off,
Here's
wouldn't
here's what I am. I am satisfied that we have a justice system, while flawed, is probably still the best in the world. And I'm convinced that there will be a trial. I'm convinced that there will be a decision made. And as long as that is done in accordance with the system and the rights that are afforded everybody, victims and the accused, that the trial will be what the trial is.
Right, but are you worried about the aftermath and how it will be taken by the community that has waited so long for justice here?
It would be my hope that anybody who looks at this would say that the justice was served in the end without predicting an outcome. And people have to realize that there's a price to live in a democratic form of government, and there's a price that when you afford rights to the people that are accused, and as long as it plays out the way it should, people should be, they can be disappointed, but I don't think you blame the mayor for a person that's either found guilty or not found guilty. And as we've talked in the past, it'd be very difficult to see that there's a not guilty here of some form of charge, but whether the charge is what he's been charged with, maybe they overreached when they brought the charges against the individual. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. There's a whole bunch of potential blame, but everybody really wants to say, well, this is really going to play out most importantly in the mayor's race. That's really an unfortunate circumstance. It may be the truth.
Unfortunate, but it may be the truth.
It may be the truth, but factually speaking, what was done in this case was the same thing that was done for 30, 40 years.
Are you surprised that your colleague Ed Burke is running for re-election given how he's being targeted by Garcia because of his representation of Donald Trump in the property tax appeals?
Well, first and foremost, I don't know that that's why anybody would say he's being targeted by Jesus Garcia.
He said so. He said so himself.
Look, he lives in a ward that is overwhelmingly Hispanic. The Hispanic community has been trying to win in wards that are majority Hispanic, yet represented by non-Hispanic aldermen for the last 15 years. So it is not new, and it is not part of the fact that he did or didn't represent Trump's interests. It is because they are looking to have representation in wards that are majority Hispanic be represented by Hispanic individuals.
But you don't usually hand them a ready-made issue by doing a thumb in your nose kind of a thing about a community. I mean, are you surprised at the insensitivity that Burke showed, that he didn't realize that this was going to be a thorn in the side of his community?
Well, first, go back to the original question. Am I surprised that he's running again? The desire to run or the choice to run is always an individual choice. I don't second guess his choice. He's served in the city council for a long time. He's a wealth of information. He has significant knowledge of basically the history of how the city has attempted to solve problems for a long, long time. Losing that type of knowledge, losing that type of involvement would be difficult for the city. You don't recover from that just automatically by bringing on a new person.
But I'm talking about on his end. Are you surprised that he represented Trump as long as he did, and are you surprised that he's running again knowing the politics of this?
Well, here, whether he's running again or not, I'm not surprised or it's not affirming. It's his decision. So I'm comfortable with it.
Is it a
if he's
mistake?
comfortable.
Is it a mistake? And is he bucking a trend that, I mean, do you think he could lose?
Anyone could lose. I mean, frankly, I think it's a mistake not to follow your heart. If he still has the fire to do this, if he still wants to do it, then he's not making a mistake. And if he were to lose in that venture, he's an adult. He's been around a long time. He knows what the costs and the stake is, and he's willing to take the risk to do a job that he loves, I presume. So
Did
I
he
don't
make
have
a
a problem.
mistake by staying with Trump as long as he did and
Well,
not realizing what that meant to his community?
Well, I think the issue is that he represented Trump when Trump was a TV personality, right? I mean, it
But
wasn't.
he didn't stop when
wasn't
he
the
became
president.
something else.
Right. He wasn't the president at the
Right.
time, and so it's not like he went out and represented a guy who was this, nasty, twittering, kind of anti-immigrant, anti-minority individual.
But
He
he didn't
represented a
stop
guy
when
who
he
was a
became that.
game show host.
He
You know what I
didn't
mean?
stop when he became that, and that was
Yeah.
the mistake.
Well,
right?
It obviously gave an opening to people who want to use that. But let's be honest. He would have a target on his back, given the makeup of his ward, if he never even saw Donald Trump or ever represented
But you
him.
don't gift wrap
He would
an issue.
still have a target.
You don't normally gift wrap an issue for your opponents.
Well, again, it was his individual choice, but I think when he started the relationship with that company, and it wasn't Trump individually, it was a company that has the Trump name on it, that's licensed his name. But at that time, it would be like representing Monty Hall. I mean, he was a game show host.
Has your relationship with Emmanuel been a negative in your ward? Is the polling showing that Emmanuel that's hurting you?
My relationship with the mayor goes back to the days that he was a congressman. He represented our community. I was one of the first elected officials in the district to support him when he ran for Congress. I think I was the first elected official to support him when he ran for mayor. I honestly don't care what my relationship with him does either to me or him in the ward.
You're polling. What
I am
does it show?
polling. Well, here, I think it shows that we both have significant support. It shows that we both have the ability to be reelected again. But whether it showed that it was dragging me down or whether it showed that my relationship with him was dragging him down, factually speaking, we have a relationship that we've worked together for a long time, and I'm not trading that for any popularity.
So then what is your determining factor? I mean, what does the polling show so far that you're doing?
It shows that we could both win.
You could both win
Yeah.
in your ward.
Well, that's the only place
that's
I'm
the only
polling.
place. So that means you're running or not?
I don't know. I mean,
What does it matter then? I mean, you know
here's,
what the
here's,
polling
here's
shows.
what
so
matters. When you started the broadcast, you said I've been doing this for 35 years.
Yeah.
So
You're tired.
I'm not tired of doing what I do, but I want to make sure that there are things that I want to do in life that sometimes as an elected official you either can't or don't, or you put off. I have 5 children. I've got 7 grandchildren. We all live within about 5 blocks of each other. We spend a lot of time together. The question is, how many more years do I have, and how many more years did they have that they want to hang around with me?
Sounds
So-
like retirement is being really thought of.
Well, I don't know that I'd retire from
No,
the
but I'm
working
saying
world,
from
but maybe
politics.
maybe from the fishbowl world.
Yeah.
you
So
know.
you're looking at it. It sounds like you're really thinking about it very strongly.
Well, I think that every 4 years you go through this,
Yeah.
because you want to make sure that if you're making a commitment for 4 years, and I look at it as a 4-year commitment, and I want to make sure that it's what I want to do. But I love I love most of what I do, and the neighborhood I grew up in. I'm very fortunate. My wife and I, we went to grammar school together in the neighborhood. We have the same friends. We've lived within the same 6 blocks since we've been kids. So, it would be difficult for me to say I don't want to do this anymore. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm fully committed to doing this for another 4 years. And in the next few days, there's no magic to mine. The mayor might have a shorter timeline. To run for alderman, you need about 500 signatures.
Yeah.
You could get that in a weekend.
But you're going to make a decision in the next couple of days.
But if I'm not doing it, I would want to make sure that we have time to allow a good candidate to get in and bubble up and represent the neighborhood as I'd like to see it represented. But if I am going to do it again, I want to announce early enough that people that are prone to be supportive, don't migrate somewhere else because I've remained silent. So.
All right.